From the Kansas City Sports Update Studio, this is the Richard Smith Show, where we talk about all things Kansas City Chiefs, brought to you by Arrowhead Update. Don't forget to check out our Royals Update podcast with Kevin Mong. Check us out on iHeartRadio, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, SoundCloud, Spreaker Player FM, YouTube, and all third-party applications. Also check us out on all major social media platforms. And if you can't find us there, just Google The Richard Smith Show and Kansas City Chiefs, and I promise you will find it. Let's talk Chiefs. How are we doing, Chiefs Kingdom? It is Monday, May 27th, and it is Memorial Day. And I would like to take a second to commemorate the men and women of our armed forces and their family members and everybody who's sacrificed their life to make our country better. And with that being said, go Chiefs. Happy Memorial Day, everybody. We're going to continue Fan Week here on the Richard Smith Show, and today I have with me Brent Lawler. How are we doing today, Brent?
I'm doing good, sir. Thank you for having me on. Yeah, go Chiefs, and happy Memorial Day to everybody.
All right. Brent Lawler is all the way from Okeechobee, Florida, and that is not a joke. The man lives down there in Florida, living the dream. How's the weather down there, Brent?
Oh, man, it's nice. We're about 100 degrees right now, but I'm in the shade and just got done grilling a bunch of ribs, burgers, dogs, you name it.
Hey, sounds like you got the Kansas City tradition in full effect. And look, enjoy that weather, because the weather is not the same in Kansas City. They've been getting hammered with rain, and I'm sure that they're ready for some sunshine up there in KC.
Yeah, we could send them something that way. That'd be great. I still got loved ones and family members and friends that live up that way.
There you go. First off, I want to ask you, how long you been a Chiefs fan, Brent?
I've been a Chiefs fan for about, 40 years. I mean, I'm 45 now, so I remember my first game, 1979 Chiefs versus Raiders. Chiefs won 27-0. I sat up in the Chiefs seats, the nosebleed section, and I just remember being 5 years old with my dad and just enjoying some Chiefs football.
Man, I love it. And to give everybody an idea of how diehard you are, because I'm sure a lot of Chiefs fans do not remember, who was the starting quarterback for the Chiefs in that game?
In 1979, that would have been Steve Fuller.
Oh, man. Hey, you know what? I'll tell you what, Brent, I couldn't have even answered that question. So that is amazing, man. That is amazing. That shows your dedication to the Chiefs, that's for sure. So we've got a lot of Chiefs news to cover today, but I want to start off with something. There was a poll on social media on Kansas City Sports Update, and I want to ask you this question because it's been up and down on the polls, and I want to get the community involved and I want your input. First off, if you could have any running back in Chiefs history to start on Kansas City Chiefs right now, the poll asked Priest Holmes or Jamal Charles, which that's a really tough question, but I'm going to open it up for you. If you could even go, outside of that, who would it be?
Well, I mean, I watched the first year or two with Joe Delaney, and there was just something electrifying in that guy. And then, he passed away, I believe, in 1984. In fact, I think we're coming up to the anniversary of that tragedy of him drowning. But I think the Chiefs struggled several years. I mean, we did have Christian Okoye, man. The Nigerian Nightmare was awesome. Barry Word, he wasn't one of my favorites, but, man, he did pretty good. But there was something about Priest Holmes that I just loved when he came to Kansas City. And Dick Vermeil, Dick Vermeil used to coach the Rams, and he had Marshall Faulk on that team. And in my eye, it looked like Priest Holmes could be that Marshall Faulk type running back in that offense. And man, he just gelled. I know people say, well, he had the offensive line, to help him out and everything. But there was just something about Priest Holmes I love, man. I hate to see him get hurt like he did. I think he could have had about 2-3 more good years and been a Hall of Famer. But then Jamal Charles comes along. And, man, that guy was something else, too. So I still, if I had to choose one, I'm still going to choose Priest Holmes. But, man, if I had to pick, it'd be 1A Priest Holmes, 1B Jamal Charles in the history of the Kansas City Chiefs as far as running backs.
And I have to agree with you on that one. I'm right there with Priest Holmes and Jamal, and I tip the hat a little bit to Priest Holmes as well. And the argument put up with that you mentioned, and it is a great argument, as he had one of the top 5 offensive lines of all time. But in the same respect, the man just was an absolute animal, and I feel like he'd have the same production in behind today's offensive line that he would, and then the early 2000s offensive line. And one more thing I want to touch base on, and a lot of you fans who don't know who Joe Delaney was, he was starting running back for the Kansas City Chiefs in the early 80s. And unfortunately, he passed away as a drowning victim trying to save 2 young kids when he didn't even know how to swim himself. So that's an incredible, heroic story, and especially on Memorial Day, that was a great point to bring up, Brent. And I wanted to emphasize and go in depth a little bit more on Joe Delaney's story, because in my mind, he's a hero in Kansas City, and a lot of these Chiefs fans, were not even alive during that generation.
No, they weren't, but they missed out, man. Just, I got to go, one game the year before it passed. It was the Chiefs versus the Bears, and got to see Walter Payton and Joe Delaney in the same game. That was just awesome. Oh,
wow. Yeah, I bet that was incredible. I'm sure that was amazing. And I'll tell you what, that's something that every NFL fan dreams of seeing Walter Payton, but you put Joe Delaney on the field as well, in a Kansas City Chiefs uniform. And that just makes the scenario all the more enticing. But moving on from the poll question, I want to ask you, being a lifelong Chiefs fan and actually spending time or growing up in Kansas City, Kansas, what would you say the impact on for the NFL draft will have on Kansas City? And on a fan aspect, I will say, a fan aspect.
I think it's going to have a good aspect on the city itself. I mean, I think both Kansas and Missouri, the Kansas City metro area, we got Johnson County, Wyandotte County, Jackson County. I think it's all going to do very well. It'll bring in the businesses, money in for the local businesses, different things like that. Of course, you're going to have fans from all over the United States, Chiefs, not just Chiefs fans, but fans from other teams going to be flying into Kansas City to be part of that draft experience. So I think it's going to have a huge impact on Kansas City. I think eventually the way the NFL is going right now, I could see, and I could be wrong, but I could see the NFL maybe branching out some Super Bowls in different cities. And, Kansas City's always had that dream of being a Super Bowl, hosting a Super Bowl. This might be it. Have a good draft day. They see the fandom, and who knows, maybe one day down the road in the future, Kansas City's awarded a Super Bowl.
Wow, I really, really love that thought, because when you look at the bigger aspect, what Nashville brought in, and they brought in like $224 million or $1 billion, whatever it was in revenue. Kansas City is a bigger platform with a more diehard core as far as Chiefs Kingdom and the following. So I feel like the NFL draft for Kansas City is going to be a way, way bigger deal in revenue for the NFL and the community than Nashville could ever be. And I'm glad you brought that up, because I never even thought about that, Brent. That's such a solid point. If we do completely demolish this draft in Kansas City, which we will, because Kansas City is diehard and all the other fans from other teams coming in, I think you're right about that. I think there's a great chance Kansas City could host a Super Bowl.
Well, I mean, it's been the talk for, the last 15, 20 years. I mean, I know they always say, well, bring the roof, but, they've had, 1 or 2 Super Bowls already in New York. So, I mean, with cold weather, I mean, football is supposed to be played in cold weather, is it not? Or is it just me?
Oh, dude, yes, absolutely.
I mean, I honestly think that one day, I mean, like I said, that's going to be up to the commissioner and all the NFL bigwigs. But if Kansas City knocks this draft day out of the park, man, I could see Kansas City hosting one day.
Let me ask you this: as far as being a Chiefs fan and how passionate we are for anything Kansas City, imagine what will happen when we have the last pick in the draft, because in round one because we won the Super Bowl the year before. Think of what the noise will be when that draft pick walks across the stage in Kansas City.
Well, yeah, think about that, but think about that parade, man. Good God, my dad's long gone, and both my brothers are older, and they remember 1969-70 season, and I've never witnessed that. Man, think about the excitement, after winning the Super Bowl, and man, we were just one play away from getting it this year. I mean, it's just that's going to be an awesome draft day, but man, just the next day, the parade, the whole, I guess you could say, the monkey off our backs finally host another Lombardi Trophy.
Oh, man.
Man, I'm looking forward to that day.
Hey, and I'll tell you what, you speak for every single Chiefs fan in the history of the Kansas City Chiefs right now, and they couldn't agree with you more. And it just seems like there's a lot of excitement in the air as far as the future of the Kansas City Chiefs because of Patrick Mahomes and the things that are happening within the organization, bringing Steve Spagnuolo in and Matt House. And I want to touch base a little bit more on Spags and Matt House with you. Where do you think we lie right now in a defensive standpoint as far as our depth and what we bring to the table in the upcoming season?
Well, I think I looked back the last 2 years, and man, we have each game, whatever reason, man, we just declined defensively. If you go back to the year, I believe we won 11 straight games. We started out 1-5, and we won 11. I mean, that's including a playoff game. Our defense was pretty solid. I mean, I think that was 2015. Pretty solid defense. From 16, 17, and 18, we just kept getting worse. And one thing that just frustrated me with the last defensive coordinator, Bob Sutton, was that he didn't do a lot of halftime adjustments. And he didn't do a lot of blitzing either. The only blitz we would ever see was Sorensen. If Daniel Sorensen would come on a blitz, well, man, most teams, when Sorensen came up to the line, they knew what was going to happen. So they were able to, get in formation, block it, and everything. And so, I don't know. I might be, in the minority on this, but I thought when we got rid of Sutton, our defense got better. I know that sounds funny, and I don't mean it to be that way or disrespectful to Bob Sutton. He's got more years of experience in the National Football League than I do because I don't have any. But I just felt like our nucleus of our defense changed. I mean, we got rid of Dontari Poe. We traded Marcus Peters. Eric Berry hadn't seen the field in 2 years. And so the gel of that team, I mean, Houston, he signs this big contract and then disappears. So, there was some dynamics of this defense that just wasn't gelling, so I thought changes had to be made. Now, at first, I wasn't a big Spags. That's not who I wanted to, as a defensive coordinator. But, he has experience. He does have experience as far as, top 10, top 15 defenses. And so, you think about Andy Reid in Philadelphia, he always ran a 4-3 defense. And his defensive coordinator was Jim Johnson, if you remember that name.
Yes.
Rest in peace, Jim. He's passed on. But Philadelphia had some good defenses in that 4-3. So I think bringing in Spags as a 4-3 defensive coordinator and Andy getting back to his normal, normalcy as he had in Philadelphia, I think our defense is going to step up this year. Am I counting the top 10 defense? I don't know. That's up to the players. I mean, Frank Clark was a huge signing. I was for it. People are like, well, you had D Ford. Well, Frank Clark spent the same amount of time in Seattle, but produced every single year without the injuries. D Ford was, the first year or two at the bench, if you remember, and then he'd come in and he had 10 sacks in 8 games, and then he was gone for the rest of the season with injuries. Then the next year he comes back, has a good couple games, disappears. And then finally, last year and this year, he kind of put it together. So to me, D Ford was a question mark. Does he? I think that's what the Chiefs thinking. So do we give him the $15 million a year on what if he comes out and his back is hurt? What if he gets injuries again? So they decided to move away from him, but they brought in Frank Clark. And Frank Clark's played in a 4-3. He knows it. So I think we're not going to miss a beat as far as pass rush because you still have Chris Jones in the middle. the other question mark will be Breland Speaks. I'm not sure on him. I wasn't impressed with him last year, just being honest. But he was a guy in college, played in a 4-3, so maybe we'll see a little bit different with him this year. K-Pass is still there. He played in a 4-3. So it kind of seems like Veach has had this plan in mind as a 4-3 defense, and I wonder if Andy was a little reluctant, and that's why we kept Bob Sutton one more year, and now Andy's kind of on board with the 4-3, and so because you go back to last year's free agency, man, we picked up Hitchens, I can't remember now, forgive me, but another guy, and they all played in a 4-3.
Ragland.
So you saw this, Ragland, but Ragland's man, he disappointed me last year. Man, I was excited about him the year before when he come back from that knee injury, and I thought he kind of helped us there at the end of the season. But he was kind of a disappointment last year. But you know what? It's a new year. He's got a chance to step up, play a little bit. He's a big boy, and one thing you need in a 4-3 is a big linebacker.
Absolutely.
So
and here's
you need a thumper.
Here's my exclamation point on everything you're saying, because you brought up good points. But I want to bring up another point to you that I think a lot of Chiefs fans are missing the point on is Reggie Ragland and Anthony Hitchens were definitely a letdown last year. Dorian O'Daniel was questionable, and Braylon Speaks is questionable. Now here's my thing: is with Bob Sutton going out the door and heading to Atlanta, I want all of Chiefs Kingdom to realize that every player that we picked up last year was a progressive transition into the defensive scheme that we're utilizing now with Steve Spagnuolo. So with with the production not being where it should be, just like you said, they weren't in the right system. So now that we have the system that we started to build around last year, it's all going to come into form this year with the players that we brought in. And so I think that, like you said, will we have a top 10 defense? I don't know. I think it's questionable at the point. I think that it's an argument. Top 15? Absolutely.
Yeah, I agree with that.
So we're gonna shift gears a little bit, and
okay.
I wanna touch base on the special teams side of the ball, because we always seem to overlook special teams with the Kansas City Chiefs, especially with all the question marks on defense, and last year the question marks on offense with cutting loose Alex Smith and moving forward with Patrick Mahomes, but our special teams is always top in the league as well. Do you think that's something that's going to continue?
Well, yeah. I mean, you got to look at our special team coach. I know his first name's Dave. His last name kind of escapes me. But he's going to be a future Hall of Famer special teams coach. I mean, he had Hester in Chicago, and he comes here, and he's got Hill, and and of course that's a question mark right now, but. We did draft Hardman out of Georgia, McCall Hardman, and he ran kickoffs and punt returns in college. So, I think we're gonna be fine there. If Hill does play this year, I think that's going to take some pressure off Hill, where he can just focus on wide receiving. But you can always bring Hill in for a game-changing play if you need to. Of course, like I said, that's a question mark. As far as kicking, you got the veteran Colquitt. He ain't going anywhere.
No.
You got Butker. I think it's a make it or break it this year in Butker. He was solid his first year, and then last year I thought he had a couple of hiccups. He had the Ravens game where we set up for the game winner and he misses it and we go to overtime. And so then he gets to redeem himself, but he just had a few odd misses last year. I thought a couple extra point misses that were just uncharacteristic of Butker. But I think, like I said, it's a make it or break it year for him. But yeah, I think we're going to be okay special teams wise. I don't think we're going to miss a beat there. We've got Neiman that just got one of the top special team players from last year. He's still going to be on the team, and so yeah, I don't see us taking a step back this year in special teams.
and I don't either. And like you said, Dave Tobe, he really has yes, Tobe has a pulse on the Chiefs staying in their lanes and what it takes to have a special teams that is really productive. And so, like you said with McCole Hartman, I really agree with that scenario. I think he's going to take a huge part in special teams along with Tyreek Hill. I don't want to touch base on that civil matter, but I think that we're going to be all right with him during the season as things have played out. Also, yes, Brad Neiman. I believe he got like the number one special teams player from this past season. I also look for, depending on how well Juan Thornhill fits into the scheme and if he's really in the starting rotation on defense, which I look for that. If not, if something happens there, I look for him to take a huge part in special teams too. And maybe with his speed, heck, we might see him as a return man. You never know. So
true.
And so that's something. Special teams, I'm with you. We're not going to miss a beat. Now, so we'll shift gears again here to the offense. And I want to ask you a question before we even say anything about the offensive unit or Patrick Mahomes or anything like that. I want your take on the future of Sammy Watkins, because before I let you take off on Sammy Watkins, I want to say one thing, and this is my belief with him, is that regardless if Sammy Watkins has a career year or not, which I think it's really possible, there's been a lot of posts on social media about him really stepping up and it being the best year of his career and him, leading the younger guys, this, that, and the other. But I think with how much we paid for him and where we're at with the team, even if he has 800 yards receiving and 8 touchdowns, I think that the Kansas City Chiefs will part ways with Sammy Watkins. And even if he is hurt most of the year like he was last year, I feel like it's going to be the same result. And I could be wrong, but Brent, what's your take on Sammy Watkins and our offense going into the future?
Well, I was in the minority when we picked him up last year. I liked it. I liked the pickup because Sammy Watkins does have the talent. If you go back to last year, the first few games, I think it was he had a slow start in the Chargers game, but in the Pittsburgh game, the 49ers game, man, that guy was catching everything inside. I think he had 3 or 4 touchdowns already by the 49ers game. And so I really like Sammy Watkins. Unfortunately, yes, he does have an injury for whatever reason. Man, this guy just has bad luck. But I do like the pickup because when he got hurt, I think it was right before the Rams game, our offense kind of stuttered a little bit. If you go back, I mean, it could have been the other teams, but I just think missing Watkins in that offense, hurt us a little bit. And, of course, who knows? He might be the number one receiver this year if things don't go the way we hope they go. And so he might be playing a different role this year in our offense. He's not the number 2 guy or the number 3 guy, but more the number 1 guy. I think if he has a career year, he's already been on Twitter and saying he's in better shape than he's always been and feels a lot healthier. So if he has a career year this year, I'm going to disagree with you. I think we might keep him if we get to the AFC Championship game and he has a career year and we didn't quite make the Super Bowl, God forbid, I see us keeping him. Trying to go that one more year with him. If he leads us to a Super Bowl win, maybe the Chiefs are going, hey, you know what? Mahomes' contract's getting ready to come up. We've got some decisions you got to make, and he could be a cap casualty. But I do like Sammy Watkins. I think he's going to do have a pretty good year this year.
And, by name, Sammy Watkins, has a great name in the NFL. It's hard to root against Sammy Watkins, especially with him in a Kansas City uniform. But let me ask you this, before we move on from Sammy Watkins' conversation. If he does not work out this year, and for some reason he's a bust, is Demarcus Robinson the answer?
Well, what is this, Demarcus Robinson's 3rd year, 4th year?
I believe 4th year.
So, 4th year. So, I mean, he's got to do something, right? I mean, this is 4th year territory right now. I was never a fan of Chris Conley. A lot of Chiefs fans love Chris Conley. I get it. But he just never impressed me, for a 3rd round pick, So, yeah, Robinson's got to step. I mean, he did step up in games last year. But he's got to do a little bit more. Here's the thing. We have a quarterback that can make any receiver look good.
Right.
you go back to Mahomes' first start. Yeah, he didn't throw no touchdowns, but to me, he made Albert Wilson look like a pro receiver.
He absolutely did.
I was never a big Albert Wilson fan. I thought he had some moments under Alex Smith, and maybe that was because of the quarterback. But I think if you go back to that Bronco game, Albert Wilson had 200 and some yards catching that game.
But I think
Unfortunately, he didn't score.
But it was because, honestly, I've thought about this before. I'm glad you brought this up. Albert Wilson had that huge game because, look, Patrick Mahomes being the second-string quarterback that first year, who was he throwing to? His first receiver was Albert Wilson.
Right. And see, I'll go ahead and tell the truth here. I was not happy with the pick of Mahomes. I'll be honest with you. I know a lot of them say, oh, man, I love the pick. At number 10, I wanted Deshaun Watson. And so I was one of the few Chiefs fans that wasn't happy with the pick because, let's face it, Big 12 quarterbacks have never put it together in the NFL. They've never, had longevity. I mean, they've had starters. We had Freeman, but he fizzled out after a couple years in Tampa.
That's because they never played against the defense.
Right. Well, and so my thinking was when Watson came out, here's Clemson. He's won a national championship. Mm-hmm. If you had a guy that looked like Alex Smith, it was Deshaun Watson.
Right.
And because, and so that's why I was thinking, man, Deshaun Watson under Andy Reid, what could go – and I'll tell you what, it was that game when Mahomes – actually, it was preseason when Mahomes came in, and, man, he's just swinging the ball everywhere on target. I was like, man, maybe we do have something here. And then he come out against Denver and hostile, the defense was, an off-season mode. No, they started their first-string defense.
They
first
did.
3 quarters.
They did. They had their first string in the last and that last 2-minute drive too.
That's right. And for him, first game, you can see a rookie get the deer in the headlight look, and he didn't have that. What was the 3rd and 17, and he hits Demetrius Harris for an 18, 19-yard gain on that first drive that Hunt runs in 30 yards for a touchdown. It was just – I was impressed, and I have been ever since.
Me too.
And I think Mahomes can make any receiver look good. And then those – our detractors say, well, now they've got game film on him. You can have all – how many game films they got on Brady, Wilson, Rodgers? These guys still go out every Sunday and make plays. Mahomes is going to be right there.
Oh, yeah, and he's going to be at the top of that list because, and I agree with you. And you're bringing up some great points, about Rodgers and Brady and all those quarterbacks at the top that have had film on them for years and years and years, or it's still incredible. And let's face it, Patrick Mahomes is better than all of them,
Yeah.
And so I get, with all that being said, man, with Mahomes being as incredible as he is, and the defense stepping up next year, like I feel like they will, and taking a little pressure off of Patrick Mahomes, do you think in your mind that he'll have a 50-touchdown, 5,000-yard season again next year?
Here's the thing about Mahomes that I like. He could. He really could. He's that good. Do I think he doesn't hit 50? In my mind, yeah, I think we're going to see 40 to 45 touchdowns, between 400 to 4,500 yards passing, because I think the defense is going to play a little bit better. But who knows, man? Mahomes could go out there and throw 60 touchdowns.
Yeah.
You go back and watch game film last year, there's probably 10 touchdowns he missed last year.
Absolutely. Great point.
In games. So who knows what Mahomes can do? Yep. We know he can throw 50 touchdowns and 5,000 yards. You know what? It wouldn't shock me if he surpassed that. It wouldn't shock me at all.
Me either. And I'll tell you what, if he does it again, he'll be the only quarterback in NFL history to ever do that.
And I'll tell you what, he'll shut his doubters up.
Absolutely. I feel like he's going to do it 3 or 4 times in his career. So my next question I want to ask you, because you brought up a point of you weren't that high on the Mahomes pick out of the gate. When we traded away Alex Smith and we made Patrick Mahomes the starting quarterback, what was your immediate thought as to the immediate future of the Kansas City Chiefs?
Well, I'll be honest, I wasn't a big Alex Smith fan. He did all right. There was just some things that Alex Smith did that would just infuriate me, frustrate me. He'd have those first half. I mean, we saw it in the playoff game against the Titans, where the man just takes us down the field and touchdown, and we come out in the second half, and the guy acts like he's never thrown a football in his life, or he can't move the offense. And yeah, I know other teams make adjustments, but man, how many times did we see that on Smith, where it just didn't correlate into the second half of football games? And so when Mahomes played that preseason game, and I think we started out 6-0. And then all of a sudden it was 6-6. I was on the camp like, hey, let's see what the young guy can do. Because at that time I didn't think we were going to make the playoffs. I really didn't. I mean, we're 6-6. We start out 6-0, and I thought the downfall would continue. And then, so when they made the decision, I knew the reason why. Rest our starters and everything. So when Mahomes came out and played against Denver, and we've discussed that already, I was like, man, he's our starter next year.
And keep in mind that for all the viewers out there, that was in Denver. His first game was in Denver it wasn't really playoff implications, but it was enough for Denver to want to win that game. And so that was the game that, like you said, there was a 3rd and 17. That was the first play when Mahomes showed us a sign of brilliance. When he was rolling back, he was running back towards the Denver end zone and chucked that ball probably 30 yards through the air to get an 18-yard pickup and drive us down the field in the last 2 minutes of the game.
Yeah, and then there was Yep.
But yeah, he drove.
Yeah, that's the one I was going to bring up. That's the one he hits out for Wilson.
Yeah. Yes, absolutely. And look, and we won that game. And so that's the thing. Like you said, he didn't have any passing touchdowns in that game, but game 1 in his NFL career. I mean, the man looked good. So that was really great implications to see what was going to happen. The future of the Chiefs. But also, he was playing with our number 2 players against a number 1 offense. So, and that's another thing I want people to realize too, is he didn't have starters around him. He was doing this with Albert Wilson as his number 1 receiver.
Right. Well, I think he had Hunt the first drive. They put Hunt the first drive, and then after Hunt scored the first touchdown of the game, he was done. So yeah, he did that with second stringers, third stringers.
Yeah, so I mean, and that's the thing is I love going back here in history and looking at where it started, because that's the foundation of Patrick Mahomes. And just like you said with Andy Reid and the Philadelphia the Eagles, he's going back to his defensive scheme that he ran there with the coach that he trusts, with Matt House, which he trusts, and then a quarterback who he probably trusts more than anybody ever in the history of the league. Plus, let's put in Clark Hunt with that, and the foundation that the Kansas City Chiefs have right now, offense, defense, and special teams, we're looking really, really, really good. So if we're gonna stay in the front office here, my next question to you, Brent, is say Brent Lawler is the GM of the Kansas City Chiefs right now on Memorial Day, with this upcoming season. What is your move right now?
Me, I'm still looking for a defensive back, cornerback. I'm going to see if I can make a trade. Patrick Peterson to me would be kind of not something I'd be interested in, because he's going to miss 6 games. But there's other quality cornerbacks out there on other teams, on other rosters that might not, for whatever reason, might not be on the other teams' radars. So I'm definitely looking for defensive backs. I know we got Rashawn Breeland and Fuller. And we drafted another guy that, a lot of people don't talk about, is Reisner. I mean, that guy comes back from the Orlando Apollos, and I got to see him play live as an Apollo. So I'm pretty excited about that. But I'm still looking to shore that up, and then maybe look at middle linebacker.
There we go.
And I think the pickup of Lee, I think that's a huge pickup. I think him and Hitchens actually might be your starters day 1. But, you still got, was it Dorian O'Daniel out there that could step up? Of course, Ragland. And I think another guy we signed out of Dallas, too. But, yeah, I'm still looking there, in that aspect. And safety-wise, I think we're doing pretty good as far as Thornhill, Honey Badger was a hell of a pickup. And then you got Marty Watts coming back. A lot of people aren't talking about Watts. And Watts was a guy that stepped up in that Jacksonville game last year, and then he got hurt and was gone for the last year. After looking at cornerback, middle linebacker, I'm going to shore up the offensive line a little bit more. Just kind of see what's out there, see what kind of offensive linemen's available. You never have too many offensive linemen.
Very true. Very true. And we're in a win now scenario. And when you look at the Kansas City Chiefs scenario and where we're lying with cap space and the contracts that are coming up, I mean, we're really in a win now here in the next 3 or 4 to 10 years of Super Bowls. So I'll agree with you on that one. I do want to make a point about our defensive backfield is, look, our defensive backs got torched last year. But the reason being, they got torched because they had no help over the top. So I look for our help in the safeties to really help out Brashad Braylon and what's his name? What's our guy on the other side?
Ward?
No.
Jarvis Ward?
It could be Ward. Ward could be the starter. I'm
Fuller?
Yeah, Fuller. So I look for those 3 players to really have help over the top and not be left on islands like they were last year and just getting, Braylon wasn't, but to getting burnt because there's really no help in the linebacking core. There wasn't any help in the safety positions. So I would love to see more defensive back depth, but I think we're going to be better off because of the depth around them. So that's a big deal.
I agree with that.
One more thing I want to add before we get to predictions here, which is the last thing in the show today, is your take. We touch base on the linebacking core. There is some depth there, and it's funny because with how much depth there is, we almost forget about some of the players that we've brought in here, which, I mean, look, there's a lot of talent there. But with that being said, and switching systems like we talked about earlier in the show, Anthony Hitchens, what is your take? This is really a pivotal point in Anthony Hitchens' career with the Kansas City Chiefs, yes or no?
Well, I mean, I wasn't, you look at him play last year, and I mean, the guy, I think the first several games led the team in tackles. I mean, so he's a tackle machine, but then again, he was playing out of a system he's not comfortable with, and so you have to take that into account. And so, where he shined in Dallas, he was in a 4-3, and so he comes to Kansas City, in a 3-4, and man, he just gets manhandled in a lot of games. But he did get a lot of tackles too. So I think in a 4-3, I think he's going to be back into his comfort zone, and he's going to be definitely a difference maker this year on our defense. I think if he I think if we have a top 5, top 10, even a top 15 defense, and he's one of the pivotal reasons, I see him being a Chief for a while. Yeah, go ahead.
I'm in absolute agreement with you on that one because what I like about Hitchens is he can drop into coverage, and he's also a really good run-stopping linebacker, but also the man can get into the backfield and get to the quarterback. So he's a really dynamic linebacker, and in my mind, I truly hope he gets back to the form that he was in Dallas, because if he does, and with Okafor and Chris Jones and the Honey Badger, who is just an all-around football player, not just a safety, that man can play every part of the field. And then on top with Juan Thornhill and Frank Clark, I mean, we brought in some dogs on defense, so I really think they're going to be getting to the ball and attacking the quarterback and forcing some turnovers here. Because pressure is the key thing. And in a Steve Spagnuolo system, I think there's going to be a lot of speed, huge motors on the field, and they're really going to be getting to the quarterback and being ball hawks like crazy.
Well, with Spags, you got to understand, in his system, it's kind of like the Patriots system where you don't know who's coming. You look at the Patriots and Bill Belichick, they really haven't had that one guy like we've had over the years, like Derek Thomas or D4, guys that all they did was rush the quarterback. And so how they get it, man, it's by system. It's by, blitzing. It's like, okay, disguising your blitzes. You come one way, I'm coming this way. And I think we didn't see that under Sutton, but under Spags, you're going to see that. It's not all going to be up to – you're going to see Frank Clark. He's going to rush the quarterback because that's what he's good at. But he's also good against the rush. But you're going to see guys like Okafor. I think you're going to see the Badger maybe blitz a little bit more. more of our defensive backs blitzing. You're going to see. I think you're going to see a lot more blitzing than we have in the past 3-4 years under Sutton.
Absolutely, and I agree with you. And like you said, it's going to be disguised blitzes. It's going to come from all different directions, and it's going to be exciting because we're going to confuse the offense. But with that being said, we're running out of time here. But I'd like to move on to predictions. Brent, if you had a prediction for this upcoming season in the Kansas City Chiefs and the progression and the changes that we have gone through, look, we were one play away from the Super Bowl last year. We were a D Ford encroachment penalty away from a Super Bowl last year. Where do you look at us topping out this coming up season?
Well, I'm looking at the schedule, and man, if the same teams that played last year show up this year, we've got a pretty difficult schedule. Especially that NFC, is it the North? NFC North, with the Lions, the Packers, the Bears, the Vikings. I mean, my gosh, that's tough. So early in the year, probably about March, I was thinking 11-5, because I'm thinking, man, some tough. But then we made some changes on our defense and everything, and I'm thinking about 12-4. I mean, our losses, I think the Bears can get us in Chicago. The Chargers, man, I still think they're going to get us one of the games, either at Arrowhead or in L.A., because I think they're going to be our, the one team that's going to be fighting for an AFC West championship is the Chargers. And you never count the other two teams out. The Broncos, I mean, they always seem to play us close, even when they have, not the best quarterback play because of their defense. So, and then the Packers, who knows? You got Aaron Rodgers coming in, on a is it Sunday night game?
Yes.
And man, how electrifying that is. But that's going to be a tough game. And I thought, that's a game that could go either way. Right now, it's L in my category. But who knows, when the season shapes up, we'll go from there. But I'm thinking 12-4, AFC West champions again. And I'm predicting a Super Bowl this year. I haven't done that in 25 years, but I'm predicting a Super Bowl this year.
Man, I love to hear it. And I'm predicting a Super Bowl as well. And honestly, I think confidently Chiefs Kingdom. And I'd really love to hear your response on this, on all of the messages here, whatever platform you listen to. I'm with Brent Lawler here. I'm the most confident I've ever been in my life saying that the Kansas City Chiefs will be in a Super Bowl next year. And I'm also with you, Brent, on us losing an AFC West game and losing to the NFC North. My prediction is the Chiefs going 14-2, sweeping our way through the playoffs, obviously, and then represent the AFC in the Super Bowl and bringing the Lombardi Trophy to Kansas City where it belongs. But the two losses that I have, just like you, the San Diego Chargers, I feel like we will lose to them because that is our biggest competition in the AFC West. And I don't feel like that we can sweep it this year. We didn't last year, but we did, the last 3 years before that. But I think you're right with the Chargers. Also, I think you're right with the Green Bay Packers. Those are my two losses, Chargers and Packers. Chiefs beating the New England Patriots in the AFC Championship to get over that hump at Arrowhead Stadium and, in fact, go to the Super Bowl and win it all. So I'm with you just like every other Chiefs fan, and that's amazing. Brent Lawler, it was a pleasure having you on the show tonight. I hope you've had a great Memorial Day, and I hope you had a great time on the show.
I did. Thank you so much for having me. And, yeah, I my heart goes out to those who've given the ultimate sacrifice for our nation. Thank you so much for that. And everybody enjoy a happy Memorial Day, and go Chiefs.
Absolutely. Go Chiefs. Thank you, Brent. Hey, everybody, thank you, Chiefs Kingdom, for tuning in. This is our broadcast tonight. This is the Richard Smith Show, where we talk about all things Kansas City Chiefs. We are here at the Kansas City Sports Update studio, brought to you by Arrowhead Update. Check us out on iHeartRadio, Google Podcasts, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, SoundCloud, Spreaker, Player FM, YouTube, and all third-party applications. Also, check us out on all major social media platforms. And if you cannot find us there, just Google The Richard Smith Show and Kansas City Chiefs, and I promise you will find us. Have a great night, Kansas City, and happy Memorial Day.